How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
After a lot of off-camera conversation, we
We've
are
been
rolling.
talking for like half an hour,
Yeah,
catching up.
Well, first of all, I want to say, before we get into this, the only reason Collider gets to be at the Toronto Film Festival is because we have great sponsors. I want to give a huge thank you to Nordstrom Canada. And I want to say, if you want anything from Nordstrom Canada, I can probably make that happen. I think someone from Nordstrom Canada is here right now. Is there anyone from Nordstrom Canada?
Can we just take
right
a
there.
break
She's right
in this
there.
interview and
Right.
go shopping? Hi. Hi, Nordstrom Canada.
Right.
Good to meet you too.
Right. So anyway,
Best return policy like
Right.
ever.
right. I can make.
On the planet. It's
Right,
true.
I can make that happen. So a huge thank you to Nordstrom Canada for being a great sponsor. And now let's get into why I get to talk to you.
Perfect.
So this is a hell of a year for you, huh?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, about a year ago when I was doing press for Jurassic, I sort of at that point it was like, okay, I'm going to be over the next year and a half before we shoot the following one, I'm going to be directing full time. But I didn't know what was going to necessarily be happening. So I knew about The Mandalorian, couldn't say anything about The Mandalorian. So I knew I was going to be doing Mandalorian. But Dad's was something that was just kind of like in its beginning sort of phases of just sort of brainstorming and figuring out what it's going to be. And so it's getting to be here at the Toronto Film Festival is such a huge honor, and not anything that like a year and a half ago I thought was going to be coming to fruition.
Sure. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I believe you shadowed your dad on Solo.
Yes.
And so I have to, which is crazy because at the time you couldn't have known about Mandalorian.
No.
And so, but I wanted, so you obviously have worked on a million film sets and you have your dad, but what was
Not
it
a
like-
million, I wish.
Right, but I am curious. So, you've been around the industry.
Yes, yeah.
So,
since,
but
yeah.
what was it like shadowing someone on set like that, and also being a Star Wars movie? Like,
I mean, what was really awesome about it was we filmed Jurassic World in Pinewood Studios in outside of London, and simultaneously Solo was being shot. And so there were a lot of people who were working on both crews. I mean, it's sort of like with like the Frank Marshall, Kathy Kennedy, like it's, they feel like cousins. Steven Spielberg, George and his relationship with Steven, like the two movies, Jurassic and Star Wars, just in my mind, it's like I'm like their first cousins.
Sure.
And at least that's how I've organized them in my head. And so, and again, like a lot of the same visual artists, a lot of, it's like they're living on the same block. I'm going to stop with the metaphors, but basically, when Jurassic ended and my dad was going to be doing Solo, I just said like, I'm calling in the ultimate favor. Like I have to be on that set. And my dad was actually he was concerned because he was like, is that going to make the other actors comfortable? Is that appropriate? Will you even be allowed to be on set? And I was just really persistent, honestly. And I just knew that this was like, I was just fanatical. I like wasn't like totally gracious about it. Like I was like, please. Like I just flew myself like out there like constantly. If I ever had to come back to the States for something, like I just had to be there as much as possible.
one of the things though, on a movie like that, I would imagine that you've never, when you're acting on a movie, you're not really looking at you don't have time to really study what the director is doing. What did you? Well, maybe you did. But you're looking up like, wait, what?
It's all I do. I don't leave set. It's all like if you look at kind of like, if you go back and look at some of the awesome directors that I've had the opportunity to work with, like that was all totally, I mean, not like I was like, oh, I want to work with this person, but I had those dreams. Like my agent is here. Didn't I have a list when I was 19 years old? I had a list when I was 19 years old where I was just like, oh my gosh, these are the people that I want to study under. Because I've always wanted to be a director. And so it's just every single set that was like, I mean, of course, my number one responsibility was to be of service to the director as the storyteller, as the visionary behind the project. And what that looked like in my mind was like, I'm just always there. Like I just never leave. Like I just, and I
So
want
were you studying lenses and everything else? Okay,
Yeah.
so you went hardcore.
For instance, one of the reasons why I was excited to work with Lars von Trier was not just Lars von Trier, although I was very excited to work with him. His DP is a guy named Anthony Dod Mantle. And Anthony it was one of the first cinematographers who was really, really, really kind of pushing what was possible in terms of, cameras within the digital medium. And so, I was 22 years old when I did that movie, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, he's going to be, I get to talk to him. And he had been working with, Harmony Korine, and, he was one of the, the Dogma 95 guys. Sure. And I loved Dogma 95. I refer to it, all the time now. I'm like, oh, give me Dogma 95 right now. But anyway, so I remember just cornering him on the set and just being like, what is happening? What are you going to do about the flicker effect? How is this medium going to evolve? And kind of the opposite version of that was on my first movie was Roger Deakins, who shot it. And Roger Deakins shot Beautiful Mind. And so I was just always on the set of Beautiful Mind.
Roger was here this morning.
What?
Yes. Exactly. I have something to tell you when the camera stops.
Great. I can't wait. But it was, so it's the cinematographers, the directors, other actors. I mean, I just wanted to be in situations where creative people were being courageous and daring and imaginative and just pushing things forward, So sure. It's just been I don't like to sit in my trailer, and when I'm wrapped, I often do not leave. Once I had kids, that obviously shifted to
sure.
a certain degree.
I heard the kids are important.
But, kids are a priority, know. But before that point, when I would be done shooting, there was no way that I was leaving set. And my dad talked about that a lot too. He was like, go there on a day, don't just stay. Go there on a day when you are not on the call sheet, and you can truly be an observer, and you can truly watch, and no one feels like they have to take care of you. And then you're going to get a really good sense of everything. And so I always do that on every single movie.
I just realized. So jumping into you have your film here is Dad's.
Yes.
Everyone watching this interview will most likely not have seen the movie yet.
Yes.
So let's do the generic. What is it about?
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. What is it about?
Yeah.
Dad's
I was like, wait, do you want me to say? I'm like, sure.
Okay. No, Dad's is it's a feature documentary. It's a comedy. And it's basically a celebration and an exploration of what it takes to be a father in today's world. And so the way it came about, I started it officially about a little over a year ago. And a company called Unilever financed it, and they have a relationship with an institute in Brazil that is incredible because they are doing remarkable work in the field of masculinity, fathering, gender stereotypes, stigmas around men being caregivers, and all of that. And they are it's called the Promundo Institute, and I think I'm mispronouncing that. And so in this first meeting that I had with them, they were like, yeah, we're thinking a feature film about fatherhood, and here's all this incredible research that they've done. And they had just released white papers around specifically fathers and their involvement with children early on in life, because the assumption is the kid's just with the mom,
Sure.
And it couldn't be farther from the truth. How impactful it can be for a father to be involved. So anyway, at this meeting, I was listening to all of this, and I was like, okay, so the goal is really to kind of, shift the culture of fatherhood, or maybe not shift it, but just acknowledge the shift that's happened around fatherhood in the modern world. And so I was like, well, parenting is absurd and ridiculous and hilarious, so it's got to be a comedy. I'm biased because I grew up on the set of Parenthood, which
Sure.
was a comedy. And so I thought of, all the wonderful, incredible comedians who, whenever I'm talking with someone, I'm typically asking them about their kids, early on in the conversation. And I love hearing dads talk about their kids. And so the idea of all of these comedians sort of being like a Greek chorus in between these profiles that I could do on fathers around the world, real fathers around the world, that felt really fun to me. And And so that's exactly what happened. What I didn't anticipate was halfway through filming that my brother and his wife would become pregnant with their first child. And so early on, I had kind of pitched a version where maybe I interviewed my dad, maybe my grandfather had passed away, and I had shot some footage of him in a project that I directed for Vanity Fair. A few years prior, I had interviewed him about the 1960s, and I was like, maybe there's something in there, I could go back and look. And my dad was like, no. But when I found out that my brother was going to have a kid, and I was looking for an expecting father, I was like, I need a dad that I can film before he becomes a dad, and then after he becomes a dad, capture the rite of passage, basically. And so when that happened, I was like, I'm sorry, Dad, y'all are in this movie.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah. Who was the toughest one to get in this movie besides a family member?
Honestly, the toughest people just aren't in the movie. It was everyone, all of the comedians who were in the film. It required no convincing. We didn't want to have to convince anyone. They were volunteering their time. So we were really, really, really lucky. And honestly, actually a little surprised how many people responded, and they were like, yeah, we're available and excited to do it, and awesome. And so it wasn't, none of the, the challenging thing was the scheduling. That was the challenging thing. But I was actually even really surprised, the easiest person to say yes and the easiest person to schedule was Will Smith. Would you ever think that?
No.
He was just like, yes. And he was like, what? Just in great communication. I mean, his team and stuff. And honestly, all of the comedians were like that. And all of the people around them who supported them with the scheduling and whatnot really facilitated this. And a lot of what the comedians said afterwards was that they had just never been asked those questions, that they were just not asked about being a dad.
I'll be honest with you.
Yes.
Let me say it on my side, on the reporter side.
Yes.
I don't ever ask personal questions. It's not what I'm caring more about the filmmaking and the filmmaking. I don't care who people are dating. I don't ask about kids. I don't do personal questions.
Because we all love you. That's why we all love you.
But the thing is, I know that there are many reporters who would love to ask those questions, but typically the wall is up. I'm sure People magazine would love to do a story on Will Smith talking about his kids, but he'll never do that. You see what I mean? Yeah. So you had a sneaky way being who you are.
Yes, yeah, and I think that also it was it's disarming to say, there's this documentary that I'm doing, and I'm interviewing my father, and my family is involved, and it's about modern fatherhood, and so it's cool, great,
Sure, and by the way, I'm giving you I'm not knocking. I'm just saying that there's a wall that I put up that I won't ask those questions.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
And I think that is something that it requires a specific circumstance in order to be able to kind of have that honest exchange.
Completely.
And it was, the set, it was a fairly large set. We would paint the backdrop, this a different color, the primary colors. And so it was kind of a big space, sort of upbeat, and they would stand for the entire interview. And so it was because a lot of them were stand-up comedians.
Oh, yeah.
And they are so, physically kind of connected, and comedy is so physical. I wanted to be able to see the full performance. And I think that when they walked in, Judd Apatow said afterwards, it's oh my gosh, I interviewed him for 2 hours, I think. It's oh my gosh, I just thought I was going to be coming in here just some questions about fatherhood. He was when I do a documentary, I at least allow my subjects to sit. Yeah, not me.
No,
not me.
But the thing about it though is that I think that it's hard when you're say you're Will Smith and you're promoting a movie. It's hard to switch to your kids, and I'm sure even with you when you're promoting, when you're going to promote Jurassic or whatever, if someone comes in and all of a sudden wants to spend half the interview talking about your family, I'm sure the wall goes up for you because it's not really what you're mentally prepared for.
Yeah, and I think also there's this, our families are so, all we want to do is protect them in every way possible. And I think there's this kind of unspoken trust. You know what? This is actually how I feel when I go and I'm interviewed by Conan O'Brien or Fallon or Kimmel.
Keep on name dropping.
Yeah,
Go on.
No. But whenever I do get interviewed on one of those shows, there is an understanding because they are more iconic than me. You know, they are huge celebrities that they get. Like, they're not going to go there because they've had to deal with whatever negative repercussions come from living a public life, you know, is the same way as anyone else that they're interviewing.
Also, I think I personally, listen, I am the wrong person, but I personally believe in that whole, like, you know, separation of, like, you know, when I talk to an actor, I want to talk about the acting and I want to talk about making the movie. Everyone deserves a private life.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think as well, like, a lot of women are, you know, not by you because of, you know, your philosophy around what you are there to do and achieve in your interviews. But, you know, a lot of other circumstances, they will ask women in particular about parenting and what it takes to balance it all. And those are not questions that are asked of fathers.
Completely.
And so that's what was so, refreshing, I think, getting to interview all those guys, because they were so, like, you could see that there were no canned answers. Like, they were really having to generate these ideas, perhaps for the first time, even. You know, perhaps it was the first time that they had articulated a specific memory or, you know, a parenting philosophy or whatever. And that was exciting. Because you felt like you're like, oh my gosh, we are having a real conversation here. And when you ask someone something and they're like, huh, you know, you always know that what will follow is authentic.
Completely. So you did Dads. You then did Mandalorian. You've been studying being a director for a very long time. Mm-hmm. What is coming up? What are you thinking about right now? And do you have something that you just can't talk about yet? There are definitely some things. There are definitely something. I'm like, there's some things cooking that I'm very, very, very excited about for the future. Because I've basically, I mean, just common sense. It's hard to get the first thing, but once you get the first thing and can show somebody something, right, all of a sudden financiers are like, oh wait, no, she can do it. Yeah. You know. Yeah, it's, you know, that's always kind of that's the barrier that you want to kind of break through. You know, anyone and that's why I just kept doing for the last like 15 or so years a lot of short films and short documentaries and music videos and just stuff like that, because I wanted to just keep learning, but also ultimately amass a portfolio of sorts to be like, hey, like, you know, you're not betting on a novice here or whatever. You know, that's sort of the plan. And I think that, you know, through that sort of journey, I was very attracted to emerging technology. And it was something that I didn't necessarily expect, because I can't work my phone. I can't turn on my television. But, like, all I want to do is talk about, like, stuff with Jon Favreau and, like, how he did Lion King. And, you know what I mean? Like, sure. that is when I saw Jurassic Park for the first time, I was 12 years old. And by the way, Perry is sitting right there. That's her favorite movie of all time. I feel very similarly. Like, that movie, how old were you when you saw that movie? No. That's young. Right. That's very young. That, by the way, explains... It stayed with you. Right. It explains a lot about Perry. I know. Yes. Truly. I was 12, but I was older. It was opening weekend of when the movie came out. And I remember crying during the film, not because I was scared, not because I was moved by the story, because of the technology, because the dinosaurs were real. And I knew in that moment, it was kind of that, like, overwhelm of, oh my gosh, what I'm feeling, like, my reptilian part of my brain is getting triggered, and, like, this is a real dinosaur. But also the adrenaline and the rush of, oh my gosh, what is possible in storytelling right now? When Jurassic Park came out, my dad was developing Apollo 13, and he was getting ready to do Apollo 13. And he went to Steven Spielberg, and he was like, how do you think I should do the weightlessness? And Steven mentioned to him this thing called the vomit comet, which is a plane where you fly up and then drop, and you get 27 seconds of weightlessness. And I remember just during this time, my dad was just obsessively trying to figure out how to achieve this. So watching
watching Jurassic Park, knowing the mentorship that was happening between Steven and my father, and then also seeing my dad be empowered by this other filmmaker and actually do that thing and use the vomit comet. Incidentally, afterwards, he went to Steven, and Steven was like, "What did you do with the weightlessness?" And my dad was like, "Vomit comet." And Steven was like, "What? You actually did that? That's insane." So it was like, I think I'm very close to my dad. I
can't tell.
I know,
Not
God.
even a little.
Oh man,
Right,
man,
yeah.
oh man. But so his passions were a lot of my passions. Like I was also equally passionate about like basketball because my dad loved basketball. So
Got it.
That's the kind of kid that I was, and so I think that just
It's shocking you wanted to be a director.
so
I mean,
shocking.
It's crazy.
How could that have happened?
Right.
So now, getting the chance to work with Jon Favreau on Mandalorian and Dave Filoni as well, and getting to get deeper and deeper and deeper into that world of what is possible with cinema is. I hope in some way that my future is there, is that I'm getting to work in alongside individuals who are really pushing the medium forward and reaching for breakthroughs and telling beautiful and impactful stories that elevate the medium. That's what I hope.
Completely. I basically have to go with you, so I'm trying to think about how I can. Should I have a million other questions? But I guess I'm curious about. When will we find out more about your episode of Mandalorian?
I don't know. I know it's coming out November 12th.
Sure. Are you?
I mean, the series
sure.
is starting
Are you
November
wrapped
12th.
on post? Or do you still have to work on it?
There's...
You don't even know what you can say.
I don't know what I can say.
Right. I got it. Okay. I won't pressure you.
Everything's on time. It's good. Things are going well.
I'll leave, you know what I mean? We'll talk more when I've seen the episode.
Yes.
And
I cannot wait, which I cannot wait
yeah,
for.
I really am.
What I will say is in the trailer that came out, there are quite a few shots from my episode. I watched it again and again and again. I should have filmed myself watching that trailer.
By the way, yes.
I was so
because that's the kind of thing that goes viral.
Right.
Especially with Star Wars fans.
What a mistake to not film
Well, by the way,
myself.
lesson learned. Here's the thing that I've learned about life, and this is very important.
Yes.
You can, and I swear I take this advice with me every day, you can never be upset if you screw up. You can only be upset if you screw up doing the same thing twice.
Never be upset if you screw up. You can only be upset if you screw up doing the same thing twice. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
okay,
it's like,
so never be upset if you screw up if you haven't done it before.
Yeah, I mean, listen, so you didn't...
I like that.
You didn't think to film yourself.
No.
But if you were to happen to say film an episode of Mandalorian Season 2, which hopefully you are, maybe you can say something right now, not if you are.
I can't, and I'm just being blank because I can't say anything either way. Like,
sure.
It's not...
Well, they're doing Mandalorian Season 2, but I'm saying if you were to happen to do another episode of something, you should then film yourself watching the trailer for the first time.
That's a good idea. No, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to film myself. I'm just going to film myself constantly. Maybe?
Sure. I like that.
Is there a mistake to not? No.
On that note, seriously, congrats on being part of the Toronto Film Festival.
Thank you.
I cannot wait to see the film and to see Mandalorian.
Thank you so much.